right, for this lesson, we're going to be looking at some more examples of scatter plots and kind of continuing on with that. So the first thing we're going to look at is interpreting a scatter plot. Okay, and here's the definition of just reminding you of what a scatter plot is. So it's just a graph that shows the relationship between two data sets. So earlier in a previous lesson, we looked at the weight of a ball compared to the circumference of the ball, and we graphed that. And we noticed that the dots on the graph kind of went up and to the right because as the ball got heavier, we noticed that it was a bigger ball. We also looked at the number of absences a student had and the grade that they received in a class. And we saw that those dots kind of went down and to the right because the more absences you had, the lower their grade was. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to pause the video for just a second and I want you to sketch this graph for restaurant sandwiches. You don't need to write all of these questions down, but do go ahead and sketch the graph and then we will answer the questions on your paper as we go through. Okay, so our graph shows restaurant sandwiches, the amount of fat that they have in grams, and then the number of calories that are in that sandwich. So let's look at these four questions. It says, how many calories are in the sandwich that contains 17 grams of fat? So if I come over to about 17 grams of fat, which would be kind of right in between 15 and 20, and I go up, I notice a dot right here, that blue dot. So you just look at how many calories that corresponds with, and that would be 400. So since you guys don't have the question written down, I want you to at least write that 17 grams of fat is 400 calories. Okay, question 2. How many grams of fat are in the sandwich that contains 600 calories? So if I come up to 600 calories and I just come over until I find a dot or get really close to one, and that matches up with 30 grams of fat. So 600 calories matches up with 30 grams of fat. All right, the third question, what tends to happen to the number of calories as the number of grams of fat increases? So as your grams of fat go up, what happens to the calories? You just kind of look at the graph and notice that it keeps going up. So we're going to say, as the grams of fat increase, so do the number of calories. Okay, and if you think about that scenario, it just makes sense for any kind of food. The more fat it has, the more calories it's going to have. And then the last question here says, a sandwich has 650 calories. Based on a scatter plot, how many grams of fat would you expect the sandwich to have? So if I come over here to 650 calories, and I come over and just kind of follow the trend of the graph. Okay, it looks like it may be somewhere right in here. I'm going to go ahead and estimate this because it says, it's just asking how many grams of fat. As long as you're in the general ballpark of it, it'll be okay. And that is right at 35. So 650 calories would be 35 grams of fat. Okay. Now, the next thing we're going to look at are different types of relationships that you will see within scatter plots, kind of noticing the trend that the dots are following. So there are 4 different kinds of relationships that we may see. Okay, and I want you to just write the name of the relationship and then just sketch the graph. Okay, so a positive linear relationship. It's positive because it's going up and to the right. And it's linear because all those dots, and again, we talked about this in the last lesson, they don't all necessarily have to fall in an exact straight line, but you could draw a line through the majority of those points. Okay, so they all kind of follow a linear pattern. The second one is a negative linear relationship, and again, it's linear because they all kind of follow a linear pattern. But this one's negative because it's going down and to the right. Okay. The third one has nonlinear. So notice if I kind of just followed the trend of the dots, it's curved. So that would be nonlinear. And then lastly, you're going to have no relationship when the points don't follow any kind of pattern whatsoever. They're really scattered all over the place. So those are the 4 different kinds of relationships that we're going to be looking at. Okay, so we're going to do a couple of examples where we just need to describe the relationship based on the graph. Okay, so the first one, like this. We have the television size and the... So we have the television size in inches down here, and then the price of that TV going up the side. So describe the relationship, okay? So I'm looking at my dots, and I notice that they kind of follow a pattern. The dots are going up and to the right, so that would be positive. And it does kind of follow a linear pattern, so that would be a positive linear relationship. Okay, and I want to describe this a little more in depth. So the bigger the TV, the more expensive. Okay, and I want you to notice one thing. As I drew my line, you notice how one point didn't even come close? And that was this dot right here. Okay, it's away from all of the other points. It doesn't really follow the trend. We call that an outlier. So I want you to add this definition into your notes. An outlier is any data point that doesn't follow the trend. Okay, so it's kind of out in la la land, out kind of by itself. All right, let's look at one more graph and we'll describe the relationship for it. All right, here we have the age and the number of pets owned. So a person's age and then how many pets they own. So I'm going to kind of look, see if there's any pattern in these dots, and I've noticed they're all kind of scattered all over the place. So for this one, what we would say is there is no relationship between a person's age and how many pets they own. Okay, so when something has no relationship, that's really all you can say about it. Nothing relates one to the other. All right, so that kind of sums up section 1 on scatter plots. So your assignment's going to be a worksheet looking at the relationships in different scatter plots and making scatter plots.